A URL is one of the key concepts of the web. It is the mechanism used by web browsers to retrieve any published resource on the web. URL stands for Uniform Resource Locator. A URL is nothing more than the address of a given unique resource on the web. In theory, each valid URL points to a unique resource. Such resources can be an HTML page, a CSS document, an image. In practice, there are some exceptions, the most common being a URL pointing to a resource that no longer exists or that is moved. As the resource represented by the URL and the URL itself are handled by the web server, it's up to the owner, you, of the web server to carefully manage that resource and its associated URL. Any URL can be typed into your browser's address bar to tell it to load the associated page resource. A URL is composed of different parts, some mandatory and others optional. HTTP is the protocol. It indicates which protocol the browser must use. Usually it's HTTP, but for the secured version, it's HTTPS. www.example.com is the domain name. It indicates which web server is being requested. Any URL can be typed right inside the browser's address bar to get to the resource behind it. But this is only the tip of the iceberg. The HTML language, which will be discussed later on, makes extensive use of URLs. Common ways to use URLs would be to create links to other documents with the A element, to link a document with its related resources through various elements such as link or script, to display media such as images with the image element, videos with the video element, sounds and music with the audio element, to display other HTML documents with the iframe element. Other technologies such as CSS or JavaScript use URLs extensively, and these are really the heart of the web. The required parts of a URL depend to a great extent on the context in which the URL is being used. In your browser's address bar, a URL doesn't have any context, so you must provide a full or absolute URL. You don't need to include the protocol. The web browser uses HTTP by default on the port, which is only required when the targeted web server is using some unusual port, but all the other parts of the URL are necessary. When a URL is used within a document, such as in an HTML page, things are a bit different because the browser already has the document's own URL. It can use this information to fill in the missing parts of any URL available inside that document. We can differentiate between an absolute URL and a relative URL by looking only at the part of the path of the URL. If the path part of the URL starts with the /, the browser will fetch that resource from the top root of the server without reference to the context given by the current documents. If you look at your slide, you'll see examples of an absolute and relative URLs. To better understand the examples, let's assume that the URLs are called from within the document locating at the following URL. If we have something like https / developer mozilla.org enus docs learn, because that URL does not start with the /, the browser will attempt to find the document in a subdirectory of one containing the current resources. So if you go to Unit 2, File Management, then you will see the examples that I've just explained and you get a better understanding, and there are some links to give you further research on absolute and relative URLs. At this point, we are ready to create the file structure that we'll be using on the web server. After we create this structure on our computer, we will upload the files via FTP, which we'll discuss next. Creating file folders can provide an added level of organization by grouping your files into categories. Give the folders clear and concise names. Names such as miscellaneous and general can create ambiguity and make file searching arduous. On the other hand, specific names such as images or documents help you locate your files faster. After you've created your folder structure, your next task is to put files in their respective folders. Be careful moving files later on, as this will break the link that is made from the item to the web page. If you break the link, then all you need to do is go back to the link and reassign it a new URL based on the new location. We talked a little earlier about folder structure in order to be able to locate our files faster. Now we're going to discuss naming conventions in order to help with that search as well. Every file you upload onto your file manager has a name. You can also add extra value assigning each file a unique title that will help make searching easier later. For example, if the image you uploaded is a picture of people strolling down the sidewalk, you might name it walking or sidewalk. Here are a few tips for naming files. All your names should be lowercase letters. Use underscores between words, no spaces. Avoid special characters, and shorter names are generally better. But if for some reason it has to be long, you should not exceed 31 characters. And use a name that reflects the file or picture and what it is. I want you to be mindful that naming conventions also work with SEO, search engine optimization. And if you go back to your notes, you'll see some links to explore some more information on that. We have our files named correctly and we're ready to load them up to the web server. How do we do that? Every system includes an FTP client as part of its file manager. Windows Explorer, Nautilus, which is a common Linux file manager, and the Mac Finder all include the functionality. However, people more often than not choose dedicated FTP clients that can store passwords and display local and remote directories side by side. If you want to install an FTP client, there are several reliable and free options. For example, FireZilla for all platforms and FireFTP, which is the one that I use. Dreamweaver has an FTP client that you can set up within its interface.